celebrating our Texas Parks and Wildlife State Parks Hispanic Heritage Month panel discussion. Now, we certainly appreciate and value the importance of diversity, inclusion, and belonging of all our groups of people that visit our state parks. So to wrap up our month, what a better way to do it than a really good discussion with other peers across the state. So to go ahead and introduce the panel, go ahead and turn on your cameras and introduce yourselves to the rest of the group. Howdy guys, howdy, how's everybody doing? First of all, I will be, I'm Edwin Quintero, I'm the moderator for this session today. And really, we want to just talk a little bit about, have a conversation between peers. And, you know, let's start off by talking a little bit about us, who we are, where we're from, what park we're currently serving at, and how did we get to the current position that we got to the role that you're in right now. So, Susana, would you like to kind of share that with us?
Sure, I'll start. My name is Susana Cruz. I'm at Cedar Hill State Park. I'm the community relations specialist here. And how I got here was kind of interesting. We're still working out kinks on how I'm supposed to talk about this. So we're just gonna ask for forgiveness later. So I started an organization in 2020, and one of my followers, it was to connect the BIPOC community to nature. And one of my followers, who was a former TPWD employee, saw me and follows me and was just like, I know of this role and I think you would be fantastic at it. And got me connected with Chris True, and then, you know, went through the process of interviewing, and here I am today, and having fun with all of our social media, doing, you know, community outreach, and really making sure that we are starting new partners and cultivating them, because in our partnerships that we build, as we all know, in the BIPOC community, when people have come in with resources, or when just people come in, if it's not somebody who speaks the language of the region or the area that you're in, you're not going to really listen. And then also, it's been notorious to sit there and just like have these people show up and then they're gone. So it's really great that I am from Dallas, like Dallas-Fort Worth area, definitely Dallas. And so people know and trust me because of I'm here in my community all the time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Hey, Jim, how you doing?
Doing great, Edwin. Thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
No problem. Hey, would you care to just share with us a little bit about you, you know, who you are, your current role, and how you got to the current position that you're currently in?
Sure. So I kind of took I'm currently the park superintendent at Brazos State Park. I've been with state parks for about 7 years now, just a little over 7 years. I was born and raised in Texas, but I was born at the other end. I was near the Panhandle. And now I'm serving down near the coast, which is a great opportunity to see new eco environments and make new friends and all that good stuff. But when I kind of got here the long way around, I joined the military right out of high school, and really enjoyed that career. When I was done with that, I decided to go into healthcare for a little while, and I was making good money, but I wasn't really very happy. I was kind of stuck inside and not being able to do the things that I really enjoyed. So I sought out another career, and from there I went to hospitality, and I ran some hotels for Marriott, thinking, you know, I still want to serve people, but I wasn't really sure where I fit in. And while working for Marriott, I realized that it wasn't working for hotels. So I was on a hike one day at Abilene State Park, and I ran into the superintendent, Ryan Hunter, and he told me about the position, and I thought, well, I'll throw my name in the hat and kind of see what happens. It pays significantly less than what I was making as a hotel manager. But the one thing that I found out is that, I applied, I got accepted for the position of as a seasonal customer service representative. And man, I could not tell you how happy I was, how much happier I was doing what I was meant to be doing. And I really felt like I found my place. And I've been here ever since, just trying to kind of slowly but surely working my way up through the ranks, up from CSR as park superintendent, and loving every single minute of it, loving the people I work with, loving the adventures that I get to do. It's just been a wonderful, wonderful ride.
Hey, that's awesome. The one thing that really brings joy to me is making those connections with our coworkers and our peers.
Yeah.
And, I remember meeting Jim one time, and we were both kind of in the same region, not, area of the state. And we were talking Longhorns.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yes.
One of my many adventures.
Yeah, so that's the neat thing about working, for Texas Parks and Wildlife, this conservation agency. You really get to meet awesome people that are working for the agency, and they're doing so many great things. Hey, JT, would you like to share your perspective? Who you are. How'd you got to your current role, and share with the rest of the members of the panels.
Thanks for having me here. So my name is Jessica Tanguma, but I go by JT. I work at Guadalupe River State Park as the park operations trainee. I've been here for about 8 months, and it's been amazing. I got my start working in outdoor recreation as a seasonal employee for a city municipality for their Parks and Recreation department. And I love just being outdoors. And one of my coworkers, she was a Texas State Park ambassador. And when she came back, she's like, hey, here's this opportunity. They're going to be applying, applications will be open pretty soon. I think it'd be great for you. I applied. I went to Brazos then in 2018 for Benson State Park. I was their State Park ambassador in 2018. And I was already their volunteer, but I took it to the next level as their ambassador. And it was an awesome experience. Got to meet lots of people. And then I eventually became a trainer for other state park ambassadors during my time there. And it's just a great way to give forward. And I, from that point on, I was always volunteering at Benson, still working outdoors. I did get a full-time position with Parks and Recreation Department, but kind of like what Tim said, I wasn't really happy. I wasn't really outdoors. I was more admin and inside, and I really wanted to be boots on the ground. So when the park operations trainee position opened, I saw it as a sign just to like, hey, this is a dream job, go for it. And now I'm here, so I couldn't be happier to be on the team.
That's awesome. And, this is great to see all these amazing things that everybody's doing. And in this particular panel, there's two people in here that I've really seen a lot of growth, both Montse and JT. I remember meeting them early on in their career when they started with TPWD. Amazing stories, to hear how they started as ambassadors and, volunteers. And so they amazing stories for everybody to really hear of. Hey, Mariah, how are you doing? Thank you for joining us today. Would you mind just sharing a little bit of your perspective, who you are, what do you do currently in the park that you're serving at, and how did you come about to serving there?
Yeah, so my name is Mariah Campis, and I'm the volunteer state park ambassador for Cleburne State Park. I'm also a full-time student at the University of North Texas. I graduate with my Bachelor of Science in Ecology this December. I actually found out about the ambassador program through a professor at my university who sent out the flyer to a bunch of students. And she was like, hey, this seems like a really cool idea. And it was like 3 days before the application deadline. So I was like, great, yeah, I'll apply very quickly. So I was happily accepted, very excited to start. And the rest has been history. I transferred to the university about 2 years ago whenever I was laid off from my job at Tarrant County College, which is where I got my associate's degree. And during that time, I had been working a bunch of, retail, food jobs, data entry, and I was just finding that this wasn't really my calling. I've always been interested in the outdoors, the environment, wildlife, but I never really got the chance to get any experience. So the ambassador program has been an excellent way for me to network, meet wonderful people like everyone here right now. Like, I'm so happy to be able to participate in something like this. It's really awesome.
That's awesome. You know, everybody here can probably relate to that. You know, there's been several people in this panel that started as ambassadors. You know, I hear the common little keywords here: passion, liking the outdoors, pursuing that career outside. And so it's amazing to hear these type of stories. And for everybody that's joining us today, it's great for them to hear this, because it really opens the possibility and opportunities for what we have here with Texas Parks and Wildlife. Hey, Christina, thanks for joining us today. How are you doing?
I am great. Thank you so much for including me in the program. Hi, everybody.
So, Christina, would you like to just tell us who you are, what do you do, and how did you get to this current role that you're in with Texas Parks and Wildlife State Parks?
Absolutely. My name is Christina Schlagel, and I am a graphic designer within the exhibits shop here at headquarters in Austin, Texas. I was born and raised in Mexico and Latin America. We moved to South Texas when I was a teenager, and our environment was always a very urban setting. And I moved to Austin, and hallelujah, it was one of those really significant moments. I became a scientific illustrator at the University of Texas for 20 years. And then I came on to Texas Parks and Wildlife when they had a call out. One of the artists had retired, and I interviewed and got in, and this is like 8 years ago. And I'm so happy to be here. I love the family here. I also have the tremendous opportunity to be a voiceover talent for the TV show for Texas Parks and Wildlife. So it's super fun.
That's awesome. That sounds really exciting.
Yeah, it is.
No, that's great. Actually, so I've seen some really talented work from Christina, and I don't, you know, my hat's off to everything that you guys do with graphic designs, and you know, it's amazing work that they produce.
We have such a great team.
It's amazing. Like I honestly, I don't know how to do that stuff, and I'm glad that there's really good talented people at our headquarters that are doing and pumping those things out there. It's great. Thank you so much, Christina. Hey, Becky, how you doing?
I'm sorry. Doing well, thank you. Thank you. This is my first day back. I actually broke my wrist September 1. So this is day one for me. So I've been out. But yes.
Hopefully everything's good. Thank you for, welcome back, and thank you for joining us today. It means a lot to everybody that's joining in and really kind of just hear everybody's perspective. So Becky, would you mind just sharing a little bit about who you are? What do you do at the current park that you're in, and how did you get there? Just tell us a little bit about that.
So I started with another state agency back in 2019, and so I wanted to come back home. So what ends up happening is my cousin tells me, oh, well, there's an opening for Texas Parks and Wildlife. I said, really, where? Like, I literally live 15 miles from my job. So I applied for it, and so I was actually transferred. So I started January 1 of 2000 and have been here ever since. I started as admin 2 and have moved up to a 4. Absolutely love my job. I do different aspects. I do the budget. I do registering campers, talking to campers, supervising personnel. So I've got 2 under me. We're pretty big. We're not terribly big, but we are big. We have 103 water with electric campsites, and then 15 water only campsites. We also have a lot of fishing. This is a fishing lake, but it's on a reservoir. So right now we are experiencing drought.
Yeah.
Yes. So I actually came back home from Austin is where I was at. So yeah. Yes.
That's great. You know, we always very similar to how you know, Jim was out in the upper West Texas area. You know, I was in a similar area, and then, you know, I kind of migrated down to the coast, a little bit closer to home. I'm originally a Rio Grande Valley native, and so, you know, everybody from the valley. You know, it's great to make these connections, because anytime, that's the neat thing about working for Texas Parks and Wildlife, we get to see all these different wild places and state parks, and we get to connect with other peers across the state. And you know, you immediately make those connections. You know, JT, I remember talking to her when I was up in North Texas. Hey, she was a Valley native, and it just, you know, I've remembered that, and now and then that I get a chance to kind of catch up with her on a conference, I'll say, hey, how you doing? And so it's great. That's the neat thing about this. A little bit about me. You know, I am the park superintendent here at Goose Island State Park. I've been here just for a little under right about 2 years now. But I really started my career with Texas Parks and Wildlife at Benson, actually, at the Benson Rio Grande Valley State Park a while back. And before that, you know, I was still looking to find something along the lines of conservation, or working for a conservation agency. And so I did a little bit of volunteer work, some work with other conservation agencies, and some work at the local university down there. And so I really was kind of geared early on in my college career to kind of follow a criminal justice, law enforcement type of career path. But my passion was really always outdoors, you know, hiking, camping. You know, when I had the chance, I would take college kids out to go kayaking, you know, on these paddling trips, camping trips. I would teach them how to do, you know, how to have some of those skills. And so it came to me one day, I'm like, really, you know, I would love to do this, you know, for a job. And, you know, fast forward, you know, I moved around. I started as a maintenance ranger at Benson Rio Grande Valley State Park. And then I kind of moved a little up the ranks, and, you know, long story short, you know, now I'm here at Goose Island State Park as a park superintendent. And so I get to do this for a living, just like Jim and everybody here in this panel. You know, we get to do this for a job, and we like what we do. And that's the one thing that I really, everybody that logs in and we talk to at state parks, it's the common response that we get all the time. So, you know, when I was growing up, some of my challenges as a kid, you know, little Edwin growing up in the Valley, wanting to kind of explore career paths. My parents were really always working outside. They were laborers. So a lot of their time was spent outside. And so growing up, I always had that passion for going and camping or hiking, going outdoors, seeking nature. But my parents really didn't like that. You know, they spent almost 9-10 hours outside working, and then to turn around on a day off and go outside again and spend some time. That was, as a first generation Mexican American, that was kind of taboo, right? That was a challenge that I faced, trying to get my family to go out and to the outdoors and recreate. And so that was one of my challenges that I had growing up. Montse, please let us know your who you are, where did you come from, and your current position. And I know Montse, I met Montse a while back, and I've been really following her, and amazing things that she's been doing.
Thank you. You know me, I like to stay in the corner secretive here. No, but I'm Montse Canedo. I work for Brazos State Park. I'm currently the volunteer coordinator here. I guess my story kind of starts, I was born in Mexico. I was raised in Mexico, and I moved here when I was 10 years old. So I've been here most of my life now. And my parents kind of had us growing up outdoors. So throughout probably my high school time, we were camping pretty much once a month at various state state parks. So they started taking us to visit state parks everywhere. And Brazos Bend is actually my home park. So that's really cool getting to work here now. After I graduated high school, though, I got a little distracted with what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So started kind of learning zoology, knowing I wanted to work with animals. That's always been a passion of mine. And somehow I ended up working in scuba diving and kind of got fully distracted with that. Somehow ended up getting distracted, learning sign language and taking almost a full degree in sign language until my dad was like, wait, focus. I know you love the outdoors. I know you love water. What about this university in Corpus Christi? And it has everything that you like and you're right by the water. So he kind of refocused me, and I ended up going to A&M Corpus Christi to study animal biology. And through those classes, I mean, it was a lot of people very passionate about the outdoors and about animals and pretty much the same interests that I had. And from that, I think it was the last semester I was in college, still trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I overheard some of my classmates saying they were starting to apply for jobs and they were looking at U.S. Fish and Wildlife and they were doing Texas Parks and Wildlife and all the different ones. And I was like, duh, like why didn't I think of that? Like I've been going camping to state parks all these years and it never occurred to me to try to work for them. How cool would that be? And finally, I applied to Parks and Wildlife. When I started looking, Brazos Bend, my home park, was hiring for a customer service rep. And I thought, how cool would it be to work there? So I took the opportunity, I applied, I luckily got in. And ever since, I've just kind of been moving up from there. I started as a customer service rep, moved up to park interpreter / volunteer coordinator. Now I'm just volunteer coordinator. And I mean, just kind of hoping to continue moving up and following this career. Because like with everyone else, I kind of found my passion here. For me, being in just an office is not the way to go. But the outdoors where people ask, where do you work? And like my office is this park. It is this incredible place. And we go out and walk trails and pick up trash and we're like, we're getting paid to be out here. Like how cool is that? So getting to reach people and talk to people and growing up from being just such a shy person starting out to now going out and networking and doing stuff like this, like it's helped me grow so much and become, I think, the person that I've been wanting to be. And I was always too shy or timid to become. So the family that we get here in this park or in this agency is incredible. The support that we get is absolutely incredible. And that's everything that's pushed me forward to be where we are today.
That's awesome. I think we always do these. I always catch myself doing these park ranger things, and I'm sure everybody in this panel does it. You know, when they're out hiking and they're taking a picture of a flower or an insect or something that normally park rangers do, and they can relate to that. So that's great. So yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see so much talent and you know, all different walks of life and how they've gotten to this particular role that they currently serve in for state parks. And so, you know, Susana, just kind of going back to some of those challenges. I know everybody here probably has had something that can relate to and relate to each other. And so we would just, you know, we'd be glad to hear your perspective on that end.
Sure. So, Montse, you know, you talked about being shy, right? I am nowhere near being shy. So one of those challenges was that, and in our culture, stereotypically, like many of us are supposed, like many women are supposed to be quiet and, you know, like kind of off to the side doing stuff in the kitchen and things. And I love being in the kitchen, but like that's my choice, right? And so my mother was an educator in Dallas Independent School District, and she wasn't quiet, and she was definitely, and she's still not quiet. She has been like the driving force for who I want to be, because anytime that I got to see representation in teachers, in, you know, professors and anything that were somebody of color, I listened up louder. Like I listened a lot, like closer to them. And I wanted to continue to be that because I went into the camping world. So that was a very odd way of how I wound up here too, is because I was in social work, criminal justice, education, and then outdoor education with camps, and was in camps for a very long time. But in the camping world is kind of elitist, and people need money in order to go to camp. And the only time that I didn't see that I saw diversity with kids was when it was in outdoor education and with camps that were for people with chronic illness, special needs, and different special interests. So whenever my kids were seeing someone like me, or it was very rare to have another person of color working at camps, they were just like, wow, and like, I want to be like her. And I'm like, whoa, I need to be a better professional role model for these kids too. Like, it made me step my game up every single time because of that moment, right? Because I remember being in certain classes and loving science, like as a kid, and then getting to high school and having a teacher ruin it for me. And when those people ruin something for you, you needed that representation at that moment. And that was one of my big ones. I grew up playing tennis and being one of the onlys. So whenever that tokenism happens, in our lives, which many of us have probably experienced, being that one and only in a room, being that one and only on a court, being that one and only in an organization, I had to learn to, still maintain my voice and feel as though I can advocate for myself. And I haven't had that problem. I've run into many challenges of being the angry Latina, or that, oh, she's feisty. And I'm like, I can't have feelings. Okay. So that was a lot of the challenge of being in these roles. And I'm 41 years old. So if you can imagine, those of you who are younger on this call, that arc that is starting to happen, the pendulum swing, that is really cool to see, that it's I'm not the only one, and I'm not just feisty. I'm not just, having an attitude or anything like that. So it's nice to be able to have other people advocate for themselves and to stand firm on issues and to continue to bring light to things that we need to, that need to change. So I those were a lot of the challenges, is not seeing change, feeling like I was the only one in this fight. And then, starting to really starting from the ground up at a lot of places, organizations, and having to be that little bulldozer. And thankfully, I'm not quiet, and thankfully I'm not shy, because then I wouldn't be where I am today. So
that's one of the things that I totally can relate to. As growing up, I think I might have mentioned this. It's just, it's easier to make that connection with these kids, especially back then. The connection to the outdoors, to feeling the belonging of this outdoor space, and how we can be a part of that. And so, it's definitely something that is in our minds nowadays, even more so, just because, everybody is really seeking a little piece of the outdoors, and this is a better way for us to be able to make that connection right now, and have somebody that they can relate to from all walks of life. They can come to a park and have that one-on-one conversation and say, hey, you know what? When I grow up, I want to be a park ranger, or I want to be a park superintendent, or, I want to be, a community relations specialist, or a graphic designer. It's really, now is the time for us to really push and keep moving forward on that, to making those connections with our folks. Mariah, would you like to share your perspective? Did you have any challenges growing up, if any, and how did you how did that lead you to the current role that you're currently in right now?
Yeah, I was gonna say I really, really enjoyed listening to Susana's perspective, because I could relate heavily to that. I actually was really, really shy timid and like not outgoing. And I found that after becoming an ambassador and also beforehand, whenever I started volunteering with other nonprofit organizations, getting involved on campus, getting more involved with just anything outdoors and what was my passion, I started becoming more outgoing, less timid, less shy. And yeah, and it's like, I can really relate to that we need to be connecting to other people and be a role model for those who may have other BIPOC people who, like maybe they're like shy and kind of timid and they're like, well, this isn't really for me. That's exactly why I like what I do, because of those exact reasons. But yeah, definitely some of the barriers that I experienced were lack of education and some outdoor recreation. Like I had never gone camping until this year and I'm 25. So I've never been really an outdoors person. I grew up in Dallas-Fort Worth, so it was very urban. My experiences in nature were the zoo, the local parks, watching Animal Planet over and over and over again. Like not really being out, but like what Edwin was saying earlier, my parents, they worked outside, as children and growing up. And so it was a little bit taboo. They're like, you want to work outside and then you want to work outside for free? Like, that's not cool. We don't like that. So that was another barrier as well. They were like, that's not really what you need to make money, right? But I always had a strong interest in wildlife, science, research. And it wasn't until like after the pandemic, when I was laid off from my job at community college, that I was finally able to make that time to start volunteering, because I think one of the barriers as well is whenever I was still in high school and early college, I was seeing that you had to do a lot of unpaid labor to get started in this field. And that's what a lot of people, I think, especially in like Hispanic people, like my family and myself, were like, no, you're not going to work for free. That's a little like my parents almost saw it as like disrespectful. But at the same time, it was still what I wanted to do. And I was just applying left and right to all these like volunteer positions, unpaid internships, things like that. And I was getting turned down for like 4 years straight. I didn't get accepted anywhere. I didn't get responded to. If I had an interview, it went really bad. It was just, kind of like a little bit of a downer. But eventually, yeah, I overcame those things. You just have to like keep at it, and not really like so much that you're the issue, but it's just that maybe we have to work a little bit harder and like a little bit longer to get to where we want to be. And I'm really happy that now, with my experiences as an ambassador at Cleburne State Park this year, my experience with lab research at UNT, experience with some nonprofits in Dallas-Fort Worth, like the River Legacy Nature Center, and a few others as well, like Texas Turtles, are all organizations that have welcomed me. And I really love and appreciate that.
Hey, thanks, Mariah, for sharing your story with us. And, yes, exactly it. I think everybody can definitely relate to that. And everybody has probably been in those shoes before where, should we apply and volunteer for this, especially coming from a Hispanic family, where you just mentioned it. You're going to work for free. You went to school, get a 4-year degree, work for free. Some sacrifices that we have to make, but to follow our passion, at the end of the day, if you have that passion to really pursue a career in outdoor conservation, hey, the more power to everybody when they're doing that. Hey, Kristina, would you like to share a little bit of your perspective on, was there any challenges that you might have faced growing up, if any, that led you to your current position, and how did you kind of overcome some of those?
Absolutely. So ours was a really interesting family. We moved to many different countries in Latin America, but we were always in an urban environment, always in the capital cities. So the idea of being outdoors was very foreign. No pun intended. And also, my parents both studied art and design in university and told my brother and I explicitly we could not pursue this as careers because there wasn't a job that could sustain you. Like, they were completely convinced. And in Latin America, that may have been the case in the 60s, but now we're in the States and it's 1980 whatever when we graduated college, and he's a professional photographer and I'm a designer. So the universe kind of self-corrected. But there was also, and I don't know if it's a Latin thing, I don't know if it was just from the family, but a female being in an outdoor kind of skewed profession was unheard of. It was so strange. And so when I got into scientific illustration at the university, and I was in zoology, so I'm relating to these stories, my parents were just out of their mind. They're like, oh, no. And I started in the mailroom. So they were just like, oh, no. They were so determined that it was going to be in an office or through marriage or really classic role playing for them. And then I think my experience at the university finally softened them. By the time I got to Texas Parks and Wildlife, they were just like, that's really cool. And I'm really happy that before they passed away, they were able to see both of their children succeed in their chosen path of creativity, and that you can build a wonderful life for yourself professionally and personally through the outdoors. It's really, there's so much there that if you just kind of scratch the surface, the opportunities are endless. And it's really important. Our jobs, I think all of our jobs are based on communication to an audience or to, nature, whatever. And our backgrounds as Latinos is a huge asset. And I don't want anybody to ever forget that, to think less of yourself because of your background. No. This is your superpower. So just have faith in that for sure.
Absolutely. And I'll echo that. It's so much, good to be able to have that, conversation with a little kid that comes to a state park and say, hey, talk to them in Spanish. And a lot of the times those are the barrier breakers. And it doesn't matter if it's in Spanish, it could be any type of language, but having that conversation, it really makes those barriers where they, all of a sudden they get broken and they have a better view of, hey, this is something like Kristina mentioned, just scratching at the surface and finding those opportunities. They're definitely there, and talking to people, communicating to people. So, as I kind of look back and think about some of these things, I started to think about growing up. How would I give myself advice if I had to travel back in time and give myself advice on, Edwin, you should really do this, when you were in high school? Because back then, you probably did some things that, you were a high school kid, you're doing these other things that are, probably not that important. But if you had to go back and give yourself advice, or anybody that's wishing to kind of follow a career in conservation or state parks, what kind of advice would you give? So JT, would you mind sharing your perspective on that?
Yes, definitely. So I thought about this question for a while, and coming from the background I come from, I was raised by my grandparents. And so they always, supported me in a lot of things that I did. And when I was, finished college, I had a kiddo, and I'm a single mom. And I wanted to give back to them because I got my hard work ethic from them, and I wanted to pay it back to them, make sure that they were secure. But in the jobs that I had that, were a little bit more financially sound, I wasn't happy, and they saw that. So if I were to go back in time and tell myself maybe right out of college, I would tell myself not to feel guilty. Feel guilty, like, you have to be working yourself to the bone in order to, make a better life for yourself and your family. When I did get this position, we sat down as a family and we talked for days. They were just like, how are we gonna make this work? We're gonna make this work. My family is in the Valley. I live up here in Spring Branch, and it's a 4-hour drive to go back home. So, telling myself to not feel guilty because we're gonna make this work. We sit down as a family, we work hard, and hey, they saw me come back that first weekend. I came, my first week here, I came back for a weekend, and they just saw a complete shift. It was 180. At my other job, I would come home just drained and sad. And when I came home that first weekend, they were like, you're a completely different person. You look so happy. You're glowing. And so it's that kind of thing. It softened them, and it made them realize, like, hey, yeah, this is going to be worth it. Like, you're thriving, you're growing. We see that already. So definitely. And, that also applies to, people who may be first generation Americans. Like, a lot of us, like, I'm not a first generation American, but I worked with a lot of them. They want to work so hard, but they want to do that same thing. They want to work themselves to the bone because they feel like they need that drive to make sure that their family is successful. And so just, get rid of that guilt because it doesn't pay off in the end, and it's not healthy, and, you want to thrive. So definitely that's the advice I would give.
That's exactly it. When you have that passion for what you do, and nothing else really matters. And it's just, there's so many times that we hear it from each other, from our peers. We really like what we do. We're not necessarily, everybody is a little bit different in terms of their locations, their state parks, or, they might work in the office a little bit outside. But at the end of the day, we're accomplishing the same mission, and we're trying to get those folks to come out and have a good, positive experience in our outdoor places that we have in Texas. So, Mariah, would you like to share a little bit of your perspective on that?
Yeah, I really, really liked what JT said. I agree with that a lot because it can be really hard not to get caught up in what you're doing, especially when you're so passionate about it. One piece of advice I would give my younger self, and to also anybody who's thinking about starting in the field, I'm 25, but I was thinking about working in the outdoors, working with wildlife since as long as I can remember, since it can be applicable to a lot of people, is definitely to ask questions, reach out, and to not really be afraid of trying something new. Whenever you limit yourself based on expectations that something's going to go wrong, or maybe they're like, that's a weird question, I'm not going to ask that. What if they think this? Or like, what if they just don't respond? Well, you never know until you're going to do it. Like, the worst thing that is going to happen is going to be like, no, I'm sorry, I'm busy. Or maybe they just don't respond. I had sent in, I don't know how many, like, whenever I graduate, I should probably like look up how many applications I sent, because that'd be interesting to see. I mean, so many that I was turned down from, and I'm still here, connecting people that have zero experience, connecting people who have more experience than me. It's all about community. People really want to share their knowledge, is what I've been finding the past 2 years. That why didn't I do this sooner? Why did I think that this wasn't for me? Because people like to share what got them into this field. People like, even in a competitive environment, people like to share their tips, their knowledge. It's what they were passionate about. And that's the advice that I would give somebody, and my younger self, for sure.
Yep. I think you guys hit it really good on a couple of keywords that I've been hearing is, putting yourself out there, asking questions, never taking no for an answer, and really keep applying for these positions, even if they're volunteer positions or non-paid. Those, anybody that's logged in and listening to this, if we can take something away from this is, that experience and giving yourself experience when it comes to applying to these volunteer positions really go a long way. And there's probably 3 people in here that can attest to that, as they started their careers as a volunteer role with Texas Parks and Wildlife State Park. So it speaks volumes when it comes to talking to and connecting and making these network connections with other peers. And so, Montse, would you care to just give us a little bit of your perspective? If you could travel back in time and give yourself a little bit of advice, how would you, change some things up if there were anything that you would change?
Definitely. And we'll kind of travel back in time to kind of where I started here at the United States. Once I moved here when I was 10, I didn't really speak the language. And coming into the school, I knew some English, but not enough to keep up with everything. And I remember the friends that I made then, they would kind of make fun of the way I pronounced things, or that I didn't know what something meant. And they kind of used that almost as a teasing game. And that's very intimidating as a kid, of course. Like, that was something that I think a lot of the part of what made me such a shy and very timid person here in the States is that would happen. Is 1, I didn't really know the language well enough, but 2, when I did attempt to use it, people made fun of me for it. And I spent so much time at home, like, pronouncing things and practicing until I was like, I think I got it, and then the next day I'm like, I got this word, and then they made fun of me for another one. And that just kind of like, I think, held me back a lot. I think that pulled me back a lot, or pulled me in, I guess, a lot into my own little shell, and built some barriers around me at that point. Now, I kind of fought through them. I practiced my language. I tried really hard so that they didn't have anything to make fun of me for. So it was a lot of just kind of practicing and repetition. But it took me probably not until after high school to realize that I was holding myself back in a lot of things because of that shyness, because I didn't want to try something because I'm too shy. And I missed on so many opportunities because of that excuse, letting myself fall back into that. So my advice, I think, to myself and to others listening in is, don't let those little barriers stop you. Don't let just kind of they're really meaningless barriers get in your way of it. People might say stuff. People might try to hold you back. They might make fun of you. They might kind of throw those little obstacles in your way, but don't let that stop you. Just kind of ignore that, and you push yourself forward, and you keep going to the goal that you want to attain. So getting into Texas Parks and Wildlife, that's a big deal. We've all broken through so many barriers and obstacles to get here. And it is because I chose to say, you know what, no more. And I moved that out of the way and kind of opened new doors for myself doing that. So I would definitely let myself know, like younger self, like, well, stop. It doesn't matter what they say. You're doing the best that you can. You're trying your best. Just keep that going. And like Edwin said, and like everyone else has been saying, also volunteer, get involved early on. I wish I had known about those opportunities also. And I kind of didn't. I was also one of those people that just had, I don't know, less important things to do than try to volunteer somewhere. And I so wish I had. In college, I finally found an volunteer opportunity with a wildlife center. And that's when I discovered like the doors that open. I mean, it is amazing. So absolutely a big advice I give to anyone is get involved, volunteer wherever you can and get that experience.
That's awesome. Something that everybody in this panel probably never gets tired of saying is, giving advice to folks that want to pursue a career in a conservation agency like Texas Parks and Wildlife is, volunteer. Don't be afraid to do that. Becky, would you care to just give a little bit of your perspective in that? If you had to travel back in time and give yourself advice, what would you give yourself advice, or anybody else that would like to pursue a career in a conservation agency like us?
I'll definitely look for opportunities. Where I'm from, I live 15 miles from the park. I never knew this park existed. You know, we would go 5 miles into Somerville and we'd go to that park. Definitely volunteer, search any kind of opportunities, honestly.
Yeah.
Apply, get your education for wildlife, just that type of thing.
Yeah, that's exactly, and one of the things that we hear all the time when we're talking to the public or we're doing these tabling outreach events, our number one responses or that we hear is, I didn't know you guys were there. And so I think being able to have a very diverse group of folks working in this environment really helps get the word out to say, hey, look, the park is here for this, or we have all these different positions that really make everything work behind the scenes, which are essential positions. And so with that, what do you think it's important to have this diversity in the workplace? And so, Jim, would you care to just share your perspective on that?
Absolutely. I think beyond the what's on the surface about diversity being important, not just for understanding other cultures or other peoples, but I think for me the importance of diversity came in where it really affected me the most is when I first came to this agency. I looked around for other people that looked like me. And I'll be honest, I didn't see a lot. And the ones that I did see were cleaning hotels, they were in the field doing, cleaning restrooms or doing plumbing. I didn't see anybody in the upper ranks that looked like me. And I honestly, when I first got here, I kind of questioned, man, is this the place for me? I mean, I'm happy, but is this the place that I belong? Like, I just didn't see people that looked like me. And it wasn't until I started looking around and got out of my own parks bubble and started looking at the agency as a whole. And that's when I met Randy Rosales. That's when I met you. That's when I met Montse. And I started seeing these other people that were in leadership roles in the park system. And I thought, this is a place for me. It needs some work, and I did my part. I joined EDIAC, and I'm trying to make Brazos Bend much more inclusive because of our diverse audience that's coming out. And so for me, I would say that the importance of having diversity in the workplace is to be able to see yourself in those roles that you want to work yourself up to. I think Candace from Abilene once said, if I don't see me, it ain't going to be me. And I think that was very true from my experience, to being able to see that in the workplace, to be able to see what it could look like, what my potentials could be. And that's why I think it's just so important. And I don't take that lightly. So, when we do outreach events, I make sure that when I go, I know that some of these audiences, this may be the only time they see a Hispanic superintendent, or it may be the only time they see a Hispanic female in this uniform. And so it's important when we do these events that we're mindful of what people are seeing, because if they don't see themselves, they won't join our team. It's important for us to be able to see ourselves in those leadership roles. And like I said, diversity in itself is something that adds value to the workplace. But I think specifically for me, seeing that diversity in the leadership roles was super important and reaffirmed to me that I'm in the right place.
Yep, that's great to hear, Jim, that you bring that up. We had earlier on when I first started working for this particular agency as well. My number one thing that I looked at on these recruiting events was, it's hard to see somebody that looked just like me. And so it was my goal for me at the time was to really get the word out, get the community involved, let them know about these different possibilities so that we can maximize a really good, diverse group that we have potential in the future to work for our agency. And so, Susana, would you like to just share your thoughts? Why do you think it is important to have this great diversity in the workplace? And how do you think that would help us, down the road?
So we all have different perspectives, even within as we're on here, like at the Hispanic Heritage Month, Latine, Latinx, we all have different regions where we're from, different countries. I mean, when we're talking about umbrella terms, we're still coming from different backgrounds. I didn't grow up in a Hispanic community at all. I grew up in a Black community. So my perspective is a little bit different too, like growing up in the hood as opposed to growing up in the barrio. And then, even within places where you are in Texas, being in the Valley, whenever I've spoken to people that live are in the Valley, you're coming from an area where you're not the only one, right? Like when I was talking about being the only one in DFW a lot of times in spaces. And, it's great for having a different approach for all kinds of solutions to issues or problems that we may have. And you never know whose perspective can really take things to a next level. I'm always about goods and get betters. And I know that sometimes that might unfold and seem like, oh, you're striving for perfection, but it's really not. It's striving for how can we do better for everyone that's going to come to us, right? And the more that we have people that are not like us, the more that we're going to have that improvement of how people can not only see themselves in leadership, but also see themselves comfortably in our green spaces. Many of our people are coming from, urban areas into sometimes driving out through sundown towns. And that's a barrier for some people. So if they can't see that you're going to be somebody that looks like them is going to be there, that can be a struggle, and that can help, that can cause people not to go. I've spoken to many people over the years about that kind of thing. And that was something that in the camping world too, we experienced because parents, in our community don't always want to send their kids off, right? And so same, we want to be protective of your family because that unit is so strong. So it's really important to factor those in and then to look at everybody's perspective in a way so that we can really be innovative. Because innovation doesn't come from us just modeling after one particular group.
Yep. No, I think you said it really good. And just being able to have these different folks that come from different walks of life, really make us as an organization to kind of take it one step ahead and one step better so that we can continue to have these wild places, these state parks for those the next generation that are going to continue to push forward and take it one step up the notch there. So great response on that. Kristina, would you like to share your perspective on why is it important to have this diverse background and diversity in the workplace?
Absolutely. So one of my key jobs is communicating through signage. And we are finally starting to address different demographics through language. And that is a huge thing. As Susana, thank you so much for being so eloquent about all of these needs and points about diversity. Creating a safe and welcoming environment within a park is inviting. And so there are some parks that don't have that much staff, but there are signs, there's wayfinding. And if you can see yourself through your language, that's a huge deal. You are communicating something else. we have the advantage of it's a picture. So you have, it's almost by default, you can just look at the picture and hey, there's an arrow, you know where you're going. But when you can tell a story about the history of a park or the region or what's available at the park in your language, that is huge. As we have 95 parks in the state of Texas. The state of Texas is in of itself so diverse in landscape and in experience and in population, the people who show up, in the background, all of this. So we have to take all of those points into account. Not every park has bilingual or trilingual signage, but we're catching up. We try to hit the parks that show the visitor experience. Are we meeting that need? And the rest of the state will catch up as we kind of redo maps, all of that. I'd love to see maybe our TV show expand into Spanish language or Hispanic heritage, like skew it a little bit, maybe have a special that could turn into more. There's so much opportunity. And I think we just kind of have to present it in a way that lifts the agency through lifting the experience of the people who participate in the parks or inviting people into the parks. And it would be huge. We could do so much. There's so much still to be done.
Hey, thanks, Christina, for sharing your perspective on that. And I couldn't agree more. I think there's definitely still a lot more that we can continue to do as a group and just elevate that to a whole new different experience. You know, a lot of these parks that are pretty close to these big metroplex areas, you all see it all the time. You guys are on the front lines all the time. And it's great that we're already starting to think about those things. And, you know, I see really good ideas. You know, Susana was talking about a few of those earlier today. Jim was talking a few of those earlier today. And so it's great to really, you know, have this welcoming environment to our visitors that are coming to the park, and when they see something in their language, you know, what better is that than to say, hey, hola, ¿cómo estás? Or, you know, welcome them to the park. Thank you so much for really, you know, bringing these things up. This is what really makes us better. So to kind of move into a little bit about what really brought us to this particular agency, Texas Parks and Wildlife, working for State Parks Division. You know, what really enticed us, or at least in my case, what really enticed me was when I was growing up, you know, I really like doing all those outdoor activities. I like teaching people about the outdoors and how to set up a tent and how to just have a really good time outdoors. That was my main goal early on, as just having these opportunities available for other people that have never experienced it. And so that really enticed me to work for Texas Parks and Wildlife. But Mariah, can you give us a little bit of your perspective as to what really enticed you to work for Texas Parks and Wildlife? What is one of the best, you know, the things that you really like of what you do currently in your role?
Well, because right now I'm a state park ambassador at Cleburne State Park. You know, even though I don't technically work for the state agency, it's still really rewarding to be able to volunteer with the park staff over at Cleburne, because it's just about, I would say, like just under an hour south of Fort Worth. So it's really close to a huge metroplex. And it was actually the first time I went out there whenever I was assigned to the park. And one thing that we try to do over there through the 3 different kinds of projects: hands-on service, community outreach, social media projects, is to foster the next generation of environmental stewards. And I kind of help do that through like social media. I've been doing a lot of that because I work a lot of remote type of jobs right now with going to school full time and being involved with a lot of organizations. But I really, really enjoy having that creative freedom, kind of like what Kristina was talking about, you know, like I find different ways to include diversity at the park through the ambassador program, a lot of it through like creativity, like things I don't really see being done at other parks, or maybe, you know, I kind of change things up a little bit, use the other parks as inspiration. Like, for example, I did like an infographic on cane-bellied water snakes over the summer because that's a snake that's native to Texas. It's been seen at Cleburne State Park. People are going to be swimming out there. That's just like one example, but I really enjoy getting to connect with all people, all walks of life. And it's also really nice for me to see other people, especially other Hispanic families, you know, Black families going out there and enjoying the outdoors, which is something that growing up, I didn't really get to see. And so I kind of just imagined that didn't really happen. I'm like, oh, well, I don't really ever see that. Does it ever happen? And it's nice to be able to see that now and be able to get to foster that as well, tend to it and make sure it keeps happening.
Awesome. Thanks, Mariah, for sharing your perspective. You know, and I kind of touched a little bit on the next question that, you know, I want to ask Montse on this. Those were some of my goals early on when I started working with this particular agency, and you know, my passion for the outdoors. I wanted to share that with everybody, and so those were my goals to promoting these opportunities outdoors for Latinos, Latinas, you know, Hispanics, or in general, all groups of people that really wanted to enjoy the outdoors. You know, if there was somebody that wanted to take part of it, the more the merrier, you know, when it comes to letting folks experience the outdoors. So Montse, you know, what kind of goals would, you know, personally or professionally, do you have in performing opportunities or promoting opportunities in the outdoors?
So goals and kind of for promoting this opportunities out there. One of the big things that we always look at, like here at Brazos Bend, as we mentioned before, there's so much diversity here. That's one of the big focuses that we have. So some of the opportunities that we have already implemented have been making our nature center, remodeling it to 5 different languages out there, the 5 most spoken languages that we have in the Houston area. And we wish we could do all of them, but there are so many languages, but we try to do the most that we could. And people love coming out here and seeing that. So now the next step would be to do programming also, not just have it in writing throughout the park. We're getting our maps in multi-languages. We're getting, you know, our nature center now, and that we have a welcoming sign with 6 different languages on it. We have a goodbye sign at the exit of the park with 6 different languages on it. But now the goal is reach out to those other communities and actually do programming for them in different languages. And I've done a few in Spanish. I've done guided hikes in Spanish. I've done a recorded virtual interpretation in Spanish, but that's only Spanish. You know, we want to reach all the other audiences out there. There is so much more than just that. So in the goals that we have at this point, it's finding out ways to do that, finding out relationships that we can build with other community partners for different backgrounds, different cultures. Obviously amongst them Hispanics, but I mean, there is such a huge population of like Vietnamese out here and Chinese, and we have, you know, of Arabic, all sorts of different cultures that live in this area. And we want to be able to cater to more. So now it's a matter of how do we build those relationships with them? How do we get all these diverse audiences out to us? And how do we provide those programs or these tours or this information to them in their various languages that we can? For me, English, Spanish, sign language, that's kind of where I limit. But then, we have someone here that can now do Vietnamese. In the past, we've had someone that could do French and Arabic. So it's a relationship that we might be able to bring back in and use. But the goal now is just to continue to expand that and be able to reach out to that diversity here. So that's kind of where we're standing now. And I feel like the agency, like Kristina mentioned earlier, the agency's catching up now. So I think while that is currently like my goal here for our park, I feel like more and more the agency as a whole is trying to have those, or is having similar goals and opportunities that they want to offer there.
Yeah, that's totally something that everybody, it really is trying to catch up on a lot of those. Here at Goose Island State Park, we do get a good variety of people coming down from San Antonio, from Houston, and so we do get quite a bit diversity coming into the park, and so we certainly want to continue building on what we're already doing, and we're having these conversations for a reason, so that we can have a better welcoming environment for everybody that visits state parks. I guess my other question would be, as we celebrate this month, as we wrap up this month, Hispanic Heritage Month, how do we bring our culture to work, to the park? Do we speak Spanish? Do we bring our our culture to the rest of the folks that come and visit our parks? And so if for example, Jim or JT, have you guys had any of that type of experience, or just simply bringing some of that culture that you're used to back home, and bringing that to the park?
Yeah, definitely, I could speak to that. So when I moved up to Spring Branch after living in the Valley for a bit of time, I told my assistant superintendent that I've spoken more Spanish at the park than I have in the Valley. And they were just like, there's no way. I was like, no, I mean, like outside of ordering food and talking to some friends, just casually, I'm not fluent. So whenever I did start working here, I started seeing, a lot of people who do speak Spanish, and you can kind of like, initially when they first see you, they have, maybe their kid or the passenger who speaks English, they'll start talking to me, and I'm just like, hey, like, hablo español, like, what do you mean? I'll ask them things, it's just that's aquí, and it's like, oh, wait a second. Like, you see that shift of, hey, like, I may not speak it fluently, but I know enough to welcome you here, to give you the basics. If you have questions like, hey, how do we get to the river? Here are the directions. And so what I actually started to do at headquarters, because I've been helping out with the CSRs at headquarters, I have a small section on one of our dry erase boards that says JT's Spanish phrase of the week. So whenever we had a burn ban, or our river was low, our showers were closed, I would have a little phrase with in Spanish, English under it, and they're just kind of like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just helping you out and helping me out too, because I'm just still learning, I'm still gaining that. And usually the first phrase, like bienvenidos was the first one. And then like que tengo buen día. So whenever people, I would say that to them, I always get an igualmente. And it's just like one of those things of like, yeah, we need to have more of this. We need to have that interaction, because you just see that shift in our guest face, and they just light up like, oh, wow, hey, like this is something that we weren't expecting. And it's just great to have that welcoming and orient them to the park for that.
Yep. Hey, Becky, so we were talking about, when we bring, we all have and celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, and possibly every day of the year. As a Mexican-American, first-generation Mexican-American, I try to do that a lot in my house with my family. But sometimes our peers, they also bring something, they bring their culture to work, or they possibly speak Spanish at work to help communicate with other visitors. How do you bring your culture to your park, and do you speak Spanish at the park?
I do speak Spanish. We really don't see many Spanish speakers. But, when we do, then of course, I do speak Spanish to them. What we're trying to also promote, my supervisor is going to start sending off, he sends off a weekly or monthly, like a Spanish phrase or words, and he's sending it to all of the employees. This way, if maintenance runs into a Hispanic, a non-speaking, I guess, speaker, then at least they can communicate some way. We have more Asian descent that come out here fishing. I wish we had more signs, which would help us. Well, how we communicate with them is we use our telephone. We communicate, we translate. But for Hispanic, I hardly get any, but we do speak to them. With our culture, I treat everyone that comes in as a family member because, Hispanics are big on family. Family is everything. And so that's how I treat everybody that walks in this door. They're part of the family.
Awesome. Thanks, Becky, for sharing with us. Hey, Kristina, would you like to just share your thoughts on that? I know I really like our background banner, and that resonates really well with me when it comes to teaching our kids our Hispanic culture. And so could you just share with us, how do you bring your culture to the park or to the office where you work at? And do you speak Spanish at your place?
So I will, and a lot of times I will review what's been translated as we're setting up for different signage. And it's interesting. One thing, I love JT's, word of the day and have it on the dry erase board. And I'm like, oh my God, we need to get a hold of Cynthia Pickens from social media. And on our website, have a phrase in Spanish or in Urdu or in Taiwanese or whatever, to include that on social media, because social media is it's immediate, it's right there. So this is like, ooh, all the little lights are going off. This is fascinating. And one thing, and it might sound strange, but not looking Hispanic. There are many people who are, but we're güeritos. You would never know. And I speak Spanish all the time. And if I speak Spanish, they will speak Spanish to my husband, who is Hispanic from the Valley and looks Hispanic. And I'm like, wait, but I'm the one who asked the question and in the language. So it was always very strange. And I think we need to be sensitive to the possibility that there are many guests that we would never know their background. Because my background and because of the time that I spent in Mexico and Latin America, so Papel Picado is a huge deal. And I know that this is the time of year that it's posted. And so I was like, oh, when we started designing for Hispanic Heritage Month, I thought, hey, we can do this. And then I had the opportunity to do some heat safety protocol, and I ended up making it a loteria game. So choosing kind of iconic experiences or art that spoke to me as a kid growing up, applying that and thinking, okay, if it affected me, hopefully it will resonate with a park guest. And so language, art, and then kind of the cultural history of a place really helps. You just kind of apply that. And I love the feeling of the approach, that family. That was beautiful. That was just absolutely beautiful. And it's true. We as an agency, our family, the experience of our guests, treating them as family, there's no better way to approach it. So bravo.
That's awesome. Thanks, Kristina, for sharing that with us. And so during this panel discussion, I really like this very candid conversation, and I've already taken some keywords here where a lot of you guys have mentioned it. Growing up, education was a really big deal. There's some barriers here and there that kind of led us to the current role that we're in, and how we overcame some of those things. And so, for me, growing up, education was a really big thing. My parents, they really didn't get much of an education. They probably got up to their 8th grade education level, but they really worked hard and put us through school, and they really made us and instilled in us to go to college, get an education, and so long and behold, I go to college and I work hard, and then they ask me, Mijo, what are you doing after you get out of college? And I say, well, I'm going to work for Texas Parks and Wildlife outside, and I really love doing this. It was taboo for them, but now they've grown to really take that and accept that it's a passion that I have to teach people, these things, outdoors, hiking, camping. So how important was education to you and your family growing up? And how important was that to follow a career in conservation? And so, Jim, would you care to just share your thoughts on that with the rest of the panel and everybody watching?
Sure. So like I said, I followed a different path to get here to Parks and Wildlife. And when again, my parents, like yours, Edwin, didn't have much more than an 8th grade education. They were migrant workers. They traveled from state to state, picking whatever was in season. And so when they finally settled down in West Texas, they wanted something different for their kids, right? And so I remember my dad always pushing, get an education. If you get an opportunity to take a class, like that's something they can never take away from you. And but he was also very practical, and he wanted me to make sure that I got an education in something that was going to be useful in his eyes and his worldview, that was going to be useful. And so when I joined the military, because we didn't have money for me to go straight to college, so when I joined the military, he wanted to make sure that I was going to get into something that was going to be, profitable for me. And so, I took the test to be a nuclear reactor operator. And my dad's like, don't do that. Like there's no money in that. Like, what are you going to do when you get out? And, lo and behold, like I said, he had a very limited worldview. Lo and behold, those guys make lots of money, right? But that's not the path that I chose. I chose to do an electronics path. And because that's I was very influenced by my father and his thoughts. And I didn't have much of a worldview other than, the small town that I grew up in. The one thing that military did teach me for sure was that I didn't want to do electronics. So when I got out, and used my GI Bill to get my education, I followed the path that I saw a lot of my family going to, which was the medical field. And so when I followed that path, I thought it's what I wanted to do, and it again, I was very encouraged because it was a lucrative field, that to get into and make some good money, and I did. I got into it and I made some good money. Where I faced the challenges when I decided to leave that field to try to find happiness. I had money, I just didn't have happiness, and so there were some challenges with that. And trying to find myself. Like I said, I was in hotels for a little while. It wasn't until I came to Parks and Wildlife that I found that happiness, that I found all those things that I did in my childhood, riding my bike and exploring the woods and jumping in the lakes and, all those things that I did as a kid. I found it all over again here in Parks and Wildlife. So I think my challenges maybe were a little bit different than yours, but just because they kind of happened later in life for me, and it took me a little while longer to find my place and find my way here at Parks and Wildlife. You asked the question earlier about what would you tell your younger self, and I kind of contemplated that question. I'd be like, man, don't waste your time, find what makes you happy and go for it. The money will come when it comes, and that's why it's so encouraging to see such like, JT and Mariah and Montse, like following their careers, their paths, even though it's not, they're not doing it to get rich, but they're happy. And that makes my heart happy to be able to see people that are able to follow their passions like that. And like I said, the money will come when it comes, so, but happiness is fleeting sometimes. And when you find a place that makes you happy, you hold on to it. So that's what I'm doing. I'm holding on to it.
That's exactly it. It's if you have the passion, I tell my kids, I'm already kind of gearing them to a particular college, and I'm like, hey, just do what you're passionate about, and and nothing else really matters. Money will come, exactly how Jim said. You'll find that way. But good deal. Susana, would you like to share your perspective? How important was education to you and your family growing up, and how important was it to follow a career in conservation, or did you just happen to fall in that career path?
Well, I kind of fell into it, but education was not something that we fell into. Education was something that was definitely like shoved onto my family. My family are educators. Most of my tias and tios are in education, or were in education, because now they're at the point where people are retired. Both of my parents were teachers. My dad was even my coach, my tennis coach at my high school. So of course, that meant that I had like 9 other dads, because they were all coaches too. So, but I was like, we had to be educated. My parents went to SMU too. Like my grandparents were very much about, you're going to go to college, you have to do this. And they went, so we had to do it. And my mother, because you got to do better than the last, generation, like in our family. I don't know how everybody else's, I just know ours. And my mother got her master's in bilingual education. And so I was like, oh, I've got to check that off too. I got to get my master's. I did not finish my master's, but that's okay. She'll forgive me one day. But I was had to work towards this thing that I'm striving for, that wasn't necessarily my goal. I mean, criminal justice, social work, and professional counseling, all of those are not what I do right now. And so I'm like, cool, I have all these skills, but I utilize those skills in, group dynamics and working with people and being able to see a need and help to fill those, or, connecting organizations with us or with other organizations, and being able to walk in a room and just how can I connect with this person right here, so that they feel comfortable enough to just be talking to me, because sometimes not everybody is, right? So I did get portions of my education that I loved, but when it came to a career in conservation, that's my family was not outdoorsy. My mother's family came from Zacatecas, and we're in the middle of 2 mountain ranges, and we went to Mexico and played with the goats, and my tios took us rattlesnake hunting and things like that. When I say us, I mean me, because my brothers and my cousins were very city kids, but I was like, let's do it, because that's clearly my personality. But my family was like, no, we need to do better than this. And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself now at 41, I'm like, oh, was it better? Are we sure? Are we sure that wasn't where we, I love that life. It was great. I do appreciate indoor plumbing and not the outhouses now, but yeah, I'm cool with being outdoors. And so when I went into the camping world and going at it in that direction, instead of seeing the opportunities in here with Texas Parks and Wildlife, it took me, a few decades to finally get here. But I think that it helped, because I did not, like I said, a teacher ruined my science in high school, and I did not want to study it anymore. I didn't even care about it. And so now when I got a chance to work in it in camping and get kids passionate about learning about science, hands-on, it really it lit a fire under me too, to be like, you know, what do I want to learn about this? Because I would have to teach the same lessons over and over again. So I had to sit there and like, let me use my reading skills, and I'm gonna keep learning this stuff, because that my grandparents too were 4th grade education, 8th grade education. And then, but they learned how to read. And my grandmother taught herself how to read in English. And for a woman that like would not speak to me in English, but spoke to everybody else in our family and like all the other cousins, she would speak to them in English, but she spoke to me in Spanish and expected me to speak to her in Spanish. I was like, how dare you? But, you know, I guess it's because I look like her. And so she was like, you know, keeping the standards high. But education was a huge thing. And now my family is starting to see and understand a little bit more about why it is that conservation is huge for me. And they have a little more understanding too about like why I do like to be outside. In 2020, even though it was sometimes a worst thing for many people, and you know, I was one of those people that got furloughed and laid off, it was also really great because it helps people to understand like we were stuck inside and they want to get out, right? And so my family is more like, okay, now I get it. Now I understand why you like being out in these like trees and these trails and stuff. And they still don't like bugs, and they still don't have a full appreciation of organisms that, you know, are not in their homes, but they're getting there. So I'm educating more with them too.
That's awesome. And I really like to hear these type of stories, how we're bridging the gap with our families, you know, because originally, you know, there were these, you know, these taboo notions about, oh, no, we're not going to go out into the wilderness. You know, there's going to be this, and that. And so it's great to hear this, you know, these stories from everybody. So, well, we are wrapping up our Hispanic Heritage Month panel discussion. I really want to thank everybody that joined in today, for the members of the panel and everybody that joined in to listen to this discussion. We will be sending out an email with everybody's contact information. And so I highly encourage that anybody that signed up for this session, if you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to anybody in this panel and just ask those questions. This is the perfect way for us to be able to, you know, for example, talk to ambassadors or previous ambassadors or park superintendents. Hey, how did you get to this position? What tips do you have for me? How can I get from point A to point B? And we're here to answer all those type of questions. So we will have our contact information in a follow-up email, and feel free to email us. With that being said, I really want to thank everybody that joined us today. Thank you, Susana, Jim, Becky, Montse, Kristina, Mariah, JT. I really appreciate you guys joining us today, and thank you so much for joining. I'll see you guys. Hasta luego.